Hey guys, Zomfox here, and today we're going to be doing another ranking of the USFL teams. Now, we did the jerseys last time, but in terms of actually ranking their teams, the first and only one so far was ranking the coaches. Well, today we're going to expand that a little bit, and we're going to be doing the coaches and quarterbacks, or essentially the QB coach duo, or in this case, tandem, because we don't know exactly who the starter is for each team, but we do know the two quarterbacks on the rosters. And so, what today's video is going to be ranking those tandems, duos, whatever you want, trios, whatever you want to call them. Essentially, the QB head coach group for every single team, from worst to best. Now, for how this ranking is going to go, is it's not going to be just me saying, well, this guy I think is the 8th worst coach in the league and the 6th worst quarterback, which is worse than the 7th worst quarterback, but the 5th best coach. No. Even though that's a part of it on how good I think each coach and quarterback is relative to each other, but what also matters is chemistry. Are you a coach that comes back from a running back, oriented offense, jam it down your throat type team, and you're going to be coaching a quarterback that's never had a running back at 500 yards but throws for 5K a year in college? That's not a good match. Now, could it be? I mean, yeah, weirder things have happened. Same thing as saying, two guys that come from similar backgrounds don't work. But for now, chemistry is a big deal based on what they've had in the past. What experiences with other coaches and coaching minds have you been around? Whether or not they're all offense, all defensive oriented, kind of matters. So let's get started. Coming in at number 8, once again, are the Pittsburgh Maulers. Now, I hate to say it because I still love their jerseys. And I'm still debating on if I want to get one. But, man, they're the worst. I'm sorry. I believe they have the worst coach in the league, if not, they have the worst. Kirby Wilson is the worst coach. Nothing against him. He's a great running back mind. It's just that's pretty much all he is. Yeah, he's been a defensive coordinator a long time ago, but really, for the last, 20 years, literally, he's been a running back coach. And the two guys that he has quarterbacking for him are a quarterback that threw for 10,000 yards as a 3-year starter at Richmond, and a quarterback that threw for 7,000 despite only starting maybe 2.5 years combined. Essentially, he has two quarterbacks who throw the ball a lot despite being a running back oriented mind. Now, another thing to mention is that Josh Love was on a practice squad for a bit with the Rams and Panthers, just for a little bit. Neither of those teams are exactly a run-heavy team. The 2020 Rams were a pass-heavier team because that was after the Todd Gurley stuff happened. And then the Panthers, they didn't even have an identity in the 2021 season. As for Kyle Loletta, I will say this. He was part of the Browns as a roster and practice squad guy during 2-year stretch, and they were a running-oriented team, or at least that's when they were winning, because, sometimes they have Baker throw 40 passes a game for some reason. But really, neither of them come from a true running back-oriented background. Both come from more passing or questionable ones. And then pairing them with one of the worst coaches in the league in Kirby Wilson, I don't think it's a good combo to have. And because of that, I think they're the worst tandem in the league. Coming in at number 7 is going to be the New Orleans Breakers, with the combination of Kyle Sloter and Zach Smith with Coach Larry Fedora. So if you remember from that ranking all 8 head coaches video, and if not, I'll spoil it for you. Larry Fedora I put as the worst. Even though I just said Kirby Wilson is the worst, it really is pretty close. It's just that Kirby Wilson was on some Super Bowl winning teams, and Larry Fedora was mainly just a barely okay college coach. He was okay, but not great. But essentially, suffice to say, they have one of the 2 worst coaches in the league, arguably the worst, and then their quarterbacks are very inexperienced. Let's put it this way: Kyle Sloter, his 4-year college statistics include 3 years where he combined for 1 attempt. He started 1 year and only got 2,650 yards on 319 attempts. It's just, he didn't really play that much, you know what I mean? He didn't do that much. It's what are you supposed to say? That's not a lot. Now, to be fair, he was undrafted in 2017. He's remained on rosters every year. 2017-18 Vikings, 2019 Lions, 2020 he wasn't, but 2021 he's on the Vikings again. But it's not like he's done anything actually playing. He never really did. He just was on them. And then Zach Smith went undrafted. No one signed him. He was on a rookie mini camp for the Bills for a couple days, and now he's on the Breakers. This is the first team he's actually arguably been on. He was pretty decent in college. He had 3,200 yards in 2019, and then in 2020, when it was a shortened season, he had 1,900 yards. But really, what hurts this team is the inexperience at quarterback to me. There's being questionable and then being completely inexperienced. You have a guy who was out of football for pretty much a season in Kyle Sloter. I mean, not Kyle Sloter, Zach Smith. But you have Kyle Sloter, who played 1 year of college football and then was on a roster. Now, I will say I think they're better than the Pittsburgh Maulers due to the fact that the Maulers, it's just really weird to have a full running back guy with them, whereas Larry Fedora's been a QB coach. He's been an offensive coordinator. I mean, he's been an offensive-minded guy, so not just a, running back. He can coach all of them. He's been a running back coach, a receiver coach, a QB coach. So, and I think that's more trustworthy than just a running back coach when comparing him with quarterbacks. But when you're pairing him with quarterbacks that don't really combine for that much experience, you get 7th best out of 8, which isn't good. Coming in at number 6 is going to be the New Jersey Generals. Now, this one is kind of surprising and hurts a bit because Mike Riley, I believe, is the 3rd best coach in the league, or is, I guess, part of what I think of the big three with him, Bart Andrus, and Jeff Fisher. But I gotta put him last of the 3, and I gotta put him at 6. To put it simply, for how great Mike Riley is, and for how great his teams have been in the AAF or AAF college, stuff like that, and the CFL, his quarterbacks are pretty bad, at least to me. Ben Holmes came out of Tarleton State, random school, solid, 3,300 yards. I mean, that's pretty decent. But he didn't go anywhere in the NFL. He had to sign with the IFL, the Indoor Football League. And yeah, that's not exactly the best thing ever. And then Deandre Johnson is a quarterback that played 1 year as a starter, and that was at Texas Southern. And at Texas Southern, he had a solid 133 rating, but he only had 2,000 yards on 250 attempts, which just isn't exactly the best to me. I think he's, Mike Riley, I guess he got his quarterbacks. Do I think they're exactly the best? No. Deandre Johnson hasn't really been in football a couple of years, pretty much. And I honestly don't see it. 1,900 yards in 8 games is pretty decent. But you essentially got a guy that really hasn't done that much, if not anything. And you get a quarterback that went to the Indoor Football League to pair with Mike Riley, who, yes, is a great coach, as he's someone that legitimately can command an offense and defense. He's done that. Even though it was a long time ago, he was a defensive coordinator a long time ago, and I mean long time ago, the 80s. But he's also been an offensive coordinator more recently. He's been in both the XFL and AAF. So to see him get 2 quarterbacks that really aren't the best is kind of surprising to me. And I mean, I guess we'll see what happens, but I just don't see it. I'm be real with you guys. I hope that his team does well. I think he's a great coach. I just don't think he got the right players or 2 quarterbacks, and because of that, I'm at 6. Coming in at number 5 for the second time are the Houston Gamblers. Didn't move on my head coaching list. They're the same here. Kevin Sumlin was 5th on my coaching list. That was close to 4, and they're here again. Kevin Sumlin, great offensive guy. 2008 to 2020 was always a head coach in a college. And then his quarterbacks, Clayton Thorson, experienced in terms of he's been on practice squads for a couple years and was a member of the Giants. And he was a 3rd-team All-Big Ten in college. As in college, he had 2 different years where he threw for 3,000 yards. But most importantly, was a starter 4 separate years, which is really good to have. Then Kenji Bahar, he was on the Ravens on their squad for 2 years as just a member of it. I mean, he was a Big South Offensive Player of the Year and stuff like that. Like, he had some solid years. So you're essentially pairing two quarterbacks that have played or had experience with a really solid coach. There's not much I can say. Pretty much these top five are all really solid both ways. It's just getting into the minute differences and details about each one that makes it hard to pick where they each go. But for this one, I got to put them at 5 just because I think their quality and more importantly how they fit together is a little bit worse when compared to some of the guys ahead of them. But this is a really solid group. Kevin Sumlin, Clayton Thorson, Kenji Bahar. They're 5th again. Yeah, it's not top 4, but it's not bad. Coming in at number 4, once again, is going to be Skip Holtz. I'm as the 4th best coach. Him and Kevin Sumlin were close, and once again, it was here. Put simply, I was going to put Skip Holtz and the Birmingham Stallions below, so at 5 instead of Kevin Sumlin team, except for one crucial thing. Skip Holtz was a college coach at Louisiana Tech, the head coach from 2013 to 2021. One of his quarterbacks, Jamar Smith, he played at Louisiana Tech from 2016 to 2019. He was a Conference USA Offensive Player of the Year in 2019. As I said, Skip Holtz coached there. They've already been a coaching quarterback duo before and had some success. They won the West Division together. They won the West Division twice together, actually. So, pretty easy to say why I'm putting these guys together. I'm just saying, like, Alex Mago is decent. I mean, he was an actual pick out of college in the NFL, though 7th round, and he's been on teams. He's been a practice squad at Seahawks and Jags, 18-19, then 19-20 he was on the Texans roster, and then he was a practice squad guy again. But yeah, the fact that Jamar Smith has been with Skip Holtz is a big deal. Now, I will say this. 4th might sound low for them being an actual duo before, but I do have to say that the other guys I think are better. I think that the other teams have either better quarterback quality or better coach quality. Most cases, it's both. So, I got to put them at 4. Though the fact that they are together won't surprise me if Jamar Smith ends up getting the starting job and ends up being, like, maybe the best quarterback. Like, that could theoretically happen just because they have that experience together. Do I think it will? No. But it could. He's been on the Tiger Cats roster for a year. He's been in a practice squad, during, before training camp, doing some stuff like that with the Patriots. So, it's just, yeah. I think that 4 is a solid spot for him. Once again, the Stallions are at 4. Haven't changed, which, hey, not bad. Coming in at number 3 is going to be the Tampa Bay Bandits. Yes, Todd Haley's team is this high. And it comes down to this. They have who I genuinely believe is the best quarterback in this league as of right now, and that's Jordan Ta'amu. He was great in the XFL, second best quarterback behind PJ, I believe. And he's been on multiple different practice squads, so he's gotten a feel of a lot of different teams, which is both good and bad. Bad he's never on a roster, but good that he's been around. And the fact that in 1 year you were on a practice squad of 4 different teams says that you were at least someone that they thought could be great. So because of that, you gotta put him high. Now, the reason I didn't put him higher than 3 is because Brady White's their backup. He's okay. He was undrafted in 2021. He played from 2015 to 2020. He basically used multiple exemptions and stuff like that. And so the fact that he was in college for literally 6 years shows that he wasn't that great. And he was in the spring league for a year, so it's okay. Yes, he was second team all AAC 1 year, but he didn't make anything out of it. He didn't get drafted. So, and when you have Todd Haley, who I said is a volatile coach, could be great, could be bad, it's hard to say. Now, another thing is, Todd Haley's basically been a receiver coach early on, then an OC. Yes, he's been head coach before, but mainly he's a receiver first. And the guy ahead of him isn't wide receiver first. They did QB. And that might be a hint to who's second. But you got to respect the fact that they have the best quarterback in this league. You got to respect that. They have a coach that's very offensive-minded with an offensive-minded quarterback. Their backup quarterback, though, hurts them a lot. But hey, number 3 is a lot better than what they were, and they were like number 6. So yeah. Coming in at number 2, falling one spot, is going to be Bart Andrus's Philadelphia Stars. They're falling one spot, and it's because their quarterbacks aren't as good as number 1, which, if you saw my last video, you probably already knew who number 1 was going to be in this scenario. But yeah, number 2 ain't bad. Bart Andrus is a quarterback first guy. He was an OC for years in the late 80s and early 90s. Then he was an offensive assistant and, most importantly, a QB coach at the Tennessee Oilers/Titans. He was a QB coach last year with the Ottawa GGs in Canadian football, yeah. Suffice to say, though, he's coached QBs. He's helped make QBs great, and he's helped make them bad. Not mainly just good. Because when he was with Tennessee, that was when they made it to the Super Bowl in 1999. Well, 1999, 2000, yeah. 1999 is when they went to the Super Bowl and lost. That was Steve McNair riding the team, getting there. So he was there when Steve McNair was really great. And he's been an offensive mind, and his quarterbacks are pretty solid. They're not as good as number 1, but they're pretty solid. Brian Scott won the Spring League's MVP twice and won the Spring League's title MVP. He won a couple other things. He was a first-team All-SC IAC, which is like the Southern California, athletic stuff. And he was Player of the Year as well in 2016. Another guy undrafted in 2017. And then Case Cookus, he's been on rosters. He was on the Edmonton Elks roster for like 2 years. He was on multiple different off-season practice squad teams. He's all right. He's all right. In college, though, he did have some pretty good years. I will say that. And I'm not lying with you. 2019, he had 4,000 yards in 12 games. It's pretty good. And it was a lot better statistics than his 3,400 yards he had before, back in 2017 when he had a starting year. Main thing was that he's only a starter for 3 years. It was 1 year, then he wasn't, and heard 1 year he was, then wasn't, then was. But in the 3 years he started, he got better each one. Went from 3,100 yards to 3,400 to 4,000. So the quarterbacks are decent. They're not the best, but they're not the worst few. They're just solid. And you tie that with who I think is the best coach, but without a doubt a top 3 coach in the league, you've got a really solid group. But there's one above them. And coming in at number 1 are the Michigan Panthers. So it shouldn't surprise you. If you saw my last video, it was talking about how the Michigan Panthers had the best quarterback room in the league. They had the second and third best quarterbacks in Michigan Ole Miss, Shea Patterson, who broke records at both schools, and former first-round pick, multi-game NFL starter, Paxton Lynch, and their head coach, who I had the second best head coach a couple weeks ago, as former player, Super Bowl champion player, and Super Bowl appearing head coach, and defensive coordinator for a long time, Jeff Fisher. Really, not a bad group to have, if I'm going to be honest with you guys. Yes, Fisher was out of football for a while, but what's important to note is you have one of the best coaches with 2 of the best quarterbacks. It's pretty safe to say you have just the top guys. And now in terms of chemistry-wise, you have a head coach that's a defensive mind. Now, even though it's not the best to have with a quarterback, the best thing that can come of that, though, is that he can teach Patterson and Paxton Lynch about defenses so they know how to counter them. They might not be getting better at pure quarterback like they would with a quarterback coach, but they will be understanding defenses better, which can exploit having, less talent or less ability versus just knowing how to play, but not knowing what they're doing. So when you compare and when you add them all together, it's just you get this group of 3 that's great. A great head coach, you have a quarterback that at worst can provide genuine experience and knowledge to the younger guy in Lynch to Patterson. Then you have a young guy that has talent and has shown the ability in college to be a legit player. So when you have this group together, I think it's the best. Now, I don't think they have the best coach or the best quarterback, but they have some of the best. And when you also add into the fact that all these other groups either have a great coach with not that good quarterbacks, or really great quarterbacks with okay coaches, versus this where you have legit of a tier list from S to F, A tier quarterbacks and coaches versus an S tier coach and a D tier quarterback, or vice versa. You just have a really solid group. And because of that, the Michigan Panthers are number one for the best QB head coach tandem in the league. This has been Zomfox. If you enjoy this content or want to be notified as soon as I upload a new video, subscribe and hit the bell notification. You'll be notified as soon as anything is posted. And remember to have a great night.